Hi guys, so I'm back with more art fair tips, and today I'm going to talk about the 10 things I wish I would have known before I did my first art fair. And I'm going to do a couple more follow-up videos on this topic. One's going to talk about the things I did to maximize my art sales, and the second is about pricing strategy. So if those interest you, be sure to subscribe so you know when those come out. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with my tip number 10 and work towards what I think is the most important tip. Tip number 10 is to plan your booth layout ahead of time and think it through like you're a customer walking through the art fair. So you want to make sure your booth setup is easy for someone to get in and out very easily so that they can access the art, see the art, and then it sort of be on their way. And I didn't do this very well. I learned a lesson there. I had a table in the middle of my layout, which made sort of a U shape, which was fine, except for the fact that I had two signs on both sides of the front of my tent that sort of made it hard for people to get in and out, and it was almost in the way of hitting them in the head. So I've removed those for the second day and had much better results. Tip number 9 is to check on the security availability during the show, because if you're going to set up all of your stuff ahead of time and it's going to sit overnight, or if it's a multi-day art fair, then you're going to need a way to secure your items. So a lot of shows will actually have security on site, but most of the vendors I found used a fourth wall or some way to kind of fully close off their tent. So you want to make sure that you're also not leaving anything super valuable in there overnight, of course, but you're going to need to think through how you're going to secure items so you don't have to keep bringing things in and out both in the mornings of your show. Tip number 8 is to think through storage ahead of time. So where are you going to put all those boxes that you brought your art in, or packing materials, or your own personal belongings? You only have usually a 10 by 10 space, and not every show gives you any space, or guarantees any space, I should say, outside of your tent. So you want to make sure you think through that through. Either run things back out to your car and give yourself plenty of time to do that, or in my case, I had a table with a tablecloth, so underneath was a great opportunity for me to store my items. Tip number 7 is to set up early and give yourself way more time than you think you're going to need. I ended up taking about 2 hours just to set up the tent portion of my display, and then another 2 hours the morning before the show just to display my art the way I wanted. So it was more time than I thought, and you definitely do not want to be feeling rushed or stressed out the day of the show. So a lot of times the show will let you set up ahead of time, maybe the night before, and they'll give you an option to drive your car up, unload all of the items actually at your tent location, and then go park. And then that way it's a little bit easier where you can go put up, you don't have to be hauling things back and forth or using a dolly or what have you. So take advantage of that. It definitely was worthwhile in my case. Tip number 6 is to bring bubble wrap or plastic wrap or some way to package your art if it sells. This is just a very professional look. A lot of times customers expect this, and they're going to be walking around the art fair, perhaps, even just back to their car, and they're going to need a way to protect the art. So it's another good tip is to offer to hold the art for them. I found that they really appreciated that if I held it in the back of my booth and they could pick it up on their way out of the show. What I did was bought very large clear plastic garbage bags that fit most of my art, which was about 16 by 20. So that worked really well because you could just easily, quickly put the art in the bag, tape it up, and then, be ready to kind of hand it to the customer, ready to go. Tip number 5 is to be comfortable and self-sufficient. What I mean by that is you want to dress comfortably for the weather. You want to look professional. You don't want to be too casual, but you also want to be comfortable wearing decent shoes. You're going to be moving around a lot, talking to a lot of people, and you don't want to be miserable. And by self-sufficient, I mean bring your own snacks, drinks, and lunch. I learned this the hard way. I was really looking forward to that art fair food, but what happened was, first of all, the prices are extremely high, right? And then I ended up having to wait in line for food and drinks or what have you. And so that took me out of my booth. And the more you're out of your booth, the less you're selling your art and talking to people about your art. So that's not good. Also, make sure you're fully prepared for the weather. In my case, I'm in Florida, and it was actually record heat that weekend, and I forgot to bring sunscreen because I thought I'm going to be in a tent. But I was definitely out walking around, talking to people and interacting out in the sun more than I anticipated. So that was good. And then also, Had I known about the weather or paid attention, I would have brought perhaps a fan or something in there that would have made myself and the people perusing my tent a little more comfortable. Tip number 4 is to bring someone to help you if you can at all possible. A friend, a family member, somebody that can help you set up the booth as well as be there when you want to take a break. If you want to use the restroom, if you want to go eat something, you'll need somebody there that can help cover people interacting with your booth. A lot of shows have artist resources where you can text a number and they'll come actually sit in your booth for you while you go take a break. Which brings me to my next tip, number 3, which is go visit the other tents. Take the time to go visit other vendors and pay attention to how they're displaying their art, pay attention to their pricing, and start talking to them. I found that to be the hands down the best experience, was actually learning from those other artists about what shows in my area do really well. They gave me a lot of tips and support on my artwork, and they're very supportive in general of emerging artists. So definitely don't miss that opportunity to go just do your research. Tip number 2 was so important, and that is do not bring too much inventory and be consistent in your presentation. I did not do this well. So I ended up bringing everything that I had made over the past couple of years. I had beaches, I had flowers, I had abstracts, I had color, I had monochrome. It was just completely all over the place. And so people would walk into my booth, they'd look around and they'd say, wow, it is very colorful in here. And then they would give me, a lot of times positive feedback on my art, but then they would leave. And when I started thinking it through, they only have a split second to make a decision about if they're interested in looking at your art or not. There are over 150 more vendors at this show. You really have to pay attention to what you're communicating in the nanosecond of people walking by. And so then when they walk by, you want to make sure they understand your concept. And so what I would do differently next time is use a little more restraint and really sort of curate your artwork in a way where you're not displaying too much. So you're not giving people too many choices, because then they won't make one. And also perhaps just pick one type of style and do different variations of color. Just don't necessarily bring everything you have. First of all, it was a pain to bring everything I had and to find a place to display it and store it. So learn from my mistake. So we made it to tip number 1, and that is do not go into the show, if it's your first one, with any expectations. So I made this mistake. I thought, hey, I'm getting out there, I'm going to sell all my artwork, it's going to be amazing, and it's all going to be a turning point from here. What I found out was that it was more a great learning experience, and it was so much fun. It was such a great opportunity to just get feedback on my art, if people liked it, if my pricing strategy was correct or not. And overall, it was worthwhile for me to do from a financial perspective. But don't go into this, with any set expectations. Be open to learning, to growing, and it's supposed to be fun, right? And be proud of yourself. This is a great first step for you as an emerging artist to get out there and show your artwork to the world. All right, so those are all the art fair tips I have for you today. Stay tuned for a few more tips, and we'll see you next time.